Welcome back to Shadows from the Tree. Here we are, episode 2 of season 3, and this week we have fire and ice as our dark genealogy theme, and we can't wait to get started. Michelle, you're going to kick us off with your story, and I can't wait to hear the details.
All right, so mine, of course, is in the 1800s, as usual.
Back to your...
About a fire that's not very well known, but it takes place on the same day as the Great Chicago Fires. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Actually, in our social media post last season when we did natural disaster, there was a bunch of people that were like, oh, my great-grandmother was part of that Chicago fire.
Yeah.
So it took the headline, basically, from your story.
Right, exactly. So that was, the big city, big industry. They lost 300 people, and there was like 100,000 people that were left homeless from all the buildings that were destroyed. So that one took the main stage for the time. And because of the secludedness and like the small like frontier pioneer village town that this was, when it happened, there was like hardly any way for people to communicate with the outside world. Wow.
So it was very remote.
Yes. Well,
for that time.
Yeah.
Even more so than normal.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're talking October 8th, 1871. All right. So these are the Peshtigo Fires.
Okay.
So this is Peshtigo, Wisconsin, northeast Wisconsin. So this happened due to drought conditions. And this was a logging industry town.
Oh, man.
So everything was dry. They had
lots of wood.
Yeah, lots of fuel, right? So you need that for this. And there was also a south westerly windstorm.
Oh, no.
Coming through. So they had drought for weeks on end, and there were articles saying that it was hazy. You know in the summer when it gets...
Oh, yeah.
Like that
you
here.
See that thickness in the air that you...
And people were having issues seeing, like their eyes were burning and the air was thick. No. So it was already leading up. You could feel the tension and the problem coming to a head at this point. So it was a lot of immigrant families, German families, and the town was said to have, there was records from 1870. That was like the most recent.
You're right, though. Furthest you could go back.
Yeah, exactly. So they said there was about 2,000 people living in that town, a little more than that. But based on the death toll, there like almost the entire town was lost, like 1,500 plus people. So it was
so
a
depressing.
really, really tough time for this area. There was a lot of articles that were, of the aftermath and what the governor did, but we're going to focus on, because there were so many names, thousands of names. How can I talk about
which one you're going to
all
choose,
of them?
Yeah.
So I picked the survivors who could talk about what happened.
Oh my gosh, Rochelle, we're like so weird. Okay. So there's a lot of similarities thus far.
Yeah. There was a father, a Catholic priest, Peter Pernin. He was from France. There's going to be discussions about Martha Newberry Kuhn, and then also Charles, they called him Charlie, Bateman.
Okay.
Do you also have a Charles?
There's just a mention of it, but It's just so funny. Yep.
All right, so...
And then they have pictures back in 1870. I wouldn't imagine that they would have captured that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's pictures. There's actually... like a museum, a historical...
Oh, wow.
It's the Peshtigo Fire Museum. So they have some, charred
artifacts
remains and the names. And there's actually a mass grave of... There's like 300 people they couldn't identify.
Me and you are going to have to make a bucket list of a travel plan for all of these places we want to go based on our stories.
To see. Yeah, so I guess that's your intro into this. I'm going to start with... the father's kind of discussion. So the priest, so what happened the night of, it's a Sunday, so they had church and the normal Sunday activities, but it was around, evening time, 8 p.m., where there's this loud roar that they hear. So the priest was gathering his stuff from his congregation, and there was a tabernacle that he wanted to bring, so he was grabbing stuff, and his dog wouldn't listen and come, so his dog ended up staying in the under the bed. He couldn't save his dog, but he almost felt like it was too late by the time he got out, because Here's a quote. "The wind increased to a violence of a hurricane. The air was filled with burning brands and sand. I plunged both myself and the cart into the river. The heat was intense, even in the water, where we nearly suffocated. Around me rose the cries of the dying."
Oof.
So they had to go into the river, and that was like one of the only ways to survive. And they would come up for air, but the air is like toxic.
And what month did you say this was?
October.
Oh, so it's chilly.
It's early
water
It's
too.
like right this time of year. I was like, this is like
perfect.
Almost. Yeah, they've had like do like memorials of it. They had a 150-year celebration in 2021. Where, but they have every year. I think it's September. They have a parade, and they try to memorialize everybody that passed. But there's also this really cool audio clip I found. Okay.
No, from 1870?
No.
Okay.
Well, one of the survivors, I mentioned Charlie Bateman. He was only 10 years old when this happened.
Oh.
So in 1946, they sat down and he recorded when he was
my goodness, his memories of it.
Yeah.
Now that's like family legend right there.
Okay, you ready? I have it.
You're going to play it?
I'm going to play it.
Yes.
It's a
hopefully
few minutes.
You guys can hear this all.
Yeah, so I'm going to play it on here. Just bear with me 1 second.
Wow.
And us youngsters were upstairs going to bed when we heard a terrible roaring noise and coming up from the west, the southwest. We looked out of the window and the whole heavens was ablaze, apparently. And the terrible noise, well, my mother screamed, and we hustled out and got those horses and got them onto the wagon. And in the air, there seemed to be explosions, like explosions of gas. And whenever that happened, fire would spring up and be on the roof. And there was a hurricane that came with it, a revolving hurricane, not like a cyclone up end, but sideways. Picked everything up with it. And when we got started from the house, the wind had got a little ahead of the fire, apparently, and there were a few trees across the road in the pioneer country at that time, new settlement. And I remember jumping that wagon across those trees, and we got away from our place about a mile, came to my uncle's place, and we decided then that we had the horses on a run. Well, we came to that place and got ahead of the fire a little bit, and my father thought that he could stay and help my uncle and save some of his household goods or some of the stock. Let my brother take the team into town with my aunt and her children, and started out. And we just kept ahead of the fire about a quarter of a mile on a dead run. When we got into town, we couldn't make the people believe what a terrible fire was coming. But it got there in no time. Some of the people ran out. Now we all thought this was the end of the world and everything was burning up. As far as we were concerned, it was pretty much the end of the world. Some of them run out on the street and said their prayers, burned right up there. Others jumped into dry wells, one on top of the other. Everybody seemed to go half crazy. And we had to cross the river to keep ahead of the fire going north to an adjoining town in Michigan, the peninsula there, Menominee, Michigan. And when we got across the river a short distance, the fire had got ahead of us. And we couldn't go any further, and the river was to the right of us at that time. So my uncle, who happened to be there in town, he was with us too. He said, "Everybody run down to the river." We jumped out of the wagon and had to go through a board fence there that was blazing, and I remember distinctly that us big boys went through all right, but my youngest brother, he couldn't go. But my mother grabbed him and threw him right through there and followed him after that. And down to the river we went, and down in there, we'd stick ourselves under the water, and we'd be smothered, and stick our head out, and we'd be smothered again with heat and smoke. And that's the way we spent the night there. When morning came, everything was gone. There wasn't anything left there. During early in the morning, a change of weather, There's a cold, sleety snow and rain came down, and we were all wet, had been in the river. And this is where historians make a mistake. Writing the description of it, they say that the water was so cold that we nearly froze. We nearly froze after the fire had gone through, a little before daylight. I remember my mother finding a baby, which I never will forget, on the way down to the river. Youngster, maybe 6 months old, had got lost, her parents had perished, or whatever it was, and grabbed him. And she thoughtfully had a blanket with her. And she dipped that blanket in the water and then put it over the heads of all the little youngsters. Us bigger boys, we were able to take care of ourselves. We were raised on the frontier there. Now, I distinctly remember being in the water there and seeing a cow or a steer with a woman astraddle of the cow's back, going right down, floating right down the middle of the river. About that time, I had a duck under. My hair was getting dry on the blaze, and when I popped up again, the scene was gone. The woman, the cow, apparently perished and dropped down there. There was one place after the fire that you could stay warm. A pile of coal, hard coal from a blacksmith shop was there, probably 4 or 5 feet in diameter. That was burning, and those that were in very bad condition were huddled around there. My mother had this little baby wrapped in that blanket right close to that fire. She was a wonderful woman. The blanket was laying there with the baby in it, and a kind of one-horse prize fighter, Joe Drees, I don't like to mention any names, but then I guess I have to, came along and was going to grab that blanket and took a hold of one end of it with the baby in it. He didn't know the baby was in there. My mother said, "You drop that." He said, "It's my blanket." Well, in this pile of live coal was an iron rod, maybe a half-inch thick and 4 feet long. One end of it was in there, and that was red hot. She grabbed the other end and started for Mr. Driss. And I'm here to tell you, he dropped that blanket. He got her little baby back there again, all right. The next morning, I couldn't talk. My feet.
So that's the end of the clip, but
when he started choking up there
about his
mom.
Yeah, I didn't play the first 3 minutes. The first 3 minutes, he's discussing how his mother had like kind of this feeling, this inkling that something terrible was going to happen.
Really?
So she told her husband and her older boys to go prepare the horse, prepare the wagon, get the livestock closer to the house. She just felt like
That's
something
crazy.
was coming. And even his neighbor, there's Charlie Lawrence, came and was like, I don't know, just talking to his dad was also a Charles Bateman. So he's like, Charlie Bateman, I feel like something's happening. And he's like, oh no, just go back, sit on your couch, chill out, everything's fine.
Wow.
And so he's like, he must just think my mom's crazy, but he's just doing this anyway. And they were filling water buckets and they were doing all this extra stuff to prepare for something. And they heard a loud roar, and they, like he said, if she screamed, and they were like, let's get out of here. So if she didn't have them prepare, they would have probably
all not made it.
Yeah.
And the baby, and the finding like a baby, and that's I'm curious to the baby. It's probably hard to even know what the baby's name was,
right?
Where it came
or if
from.
they kept the baby, or
wow,
yeah. So
that's a really good find.
Yeah.
Like a really good find.
I was really, really happy when I uncovered that. That was on the Wisconsin Historical Society. It's like a 10-minute clip. I just played a section of it, but I felt, hearing the voices of somebody who lived through it in the 1800s is like,
it's amazing.
The crackling, I don't know, it felt right.
It really did.
So,
and you can never get it as good. Here we are telling people stories, but you'll never get it as good as the person telling it themselves.
Yeah, and he was talking about his mom. He really, he felt like she saved them, and she was saving babies after the fact too. So she was really, imperative to his survival and her family's survival.
Wow.
There's also the poor Newberry family. Okay, so there's so many deaths in that family, and there was a Martha Newberry Kuhn. So she married into the Newberry family. So George Kuhn married Martha Newberry, and then Grace Kuhn married Martha's brother, Charles Newberry. So George, Martha, and their son, and Grace all survived the fire, but Charles Newberry and his and Grace's 2 sons died.
Oh.
So Martha, 2 days after, there's this letter found. She wrote to a sister, so George and Grace's sister. Mm-hmm. So this is to Mary Kuhn Powell on October 10th, 1871. So it says, "Dear sister, I have bad news to tell. Charlie and his 2 little boys are gone. Oh, what a horrible death. There was a tornado of fire swept over the farming district and on Peshtigo village. It came on very suddenly. Charlie and his family started to flee. They got about a half a mile from home when they went into a little pool of water. Charlie had the 2 children and some things he was trying to save. He passed through the water thinking he got farther away from the fire. Grace turned back into the water and was saved. In the water were Brother William and his family, his wife and his baby and his wife's sister. They were all remained to tell the tale. Oh, Mary, it was truly a terrible horror. It rained fire. The air was on fire. Some thought the last day had come. Mary, my father, 4 brothers, 2 sister-in-laws, and 5 of their children, 2 of Grace's and 3 of Brother Walter's. Oh, dear Mary, we are almost crazy. One can hardly keep one's senses together to write you anything." George went over to see if he could find their bodies. He found Charlie and the children about 5 rods from where Grace was. Charlie and Jessie were lying on their faces, and Frankie was sitting down by a stump with his hands up to his face. Poor, poor little ones.
Oh.
Mother was saved. She was in Menominee on a visit, but poor father, he was burned, and most all of my brothers. Grace counted 89 dead bodies within the space of a half mile. There were probably 300 dead. Oh, Mary, Grace has no clothes. I either. Our eyes were all burned, but we are better now. Grace has pulses on her eyes, and they are getting better. George, Eddie, and I saved by fleeing into the river. Grace wants to go to her father as soon as she gets the means to do so. We will have to make her some clothes. George and I did not save any clothes. Eddie was in bed. I got him up and dressed without his stockings. He is without a stocking to his name. It seems that I did not want anything more. George wants you to go see your father and have him send her money to get home with. Poor Grace is sadly afflicted, and my poor mother. George found the bodies of all our folks except 3. Father, 1 brother, and his wife. He is going tomorrow with some men and some boards to bury them. 1 brother was all burned except for his face. Oh, it's too terrible to write about or to believe. Oh, if they have only gone to heaven. They had time. They must have prayed. Grace said Jessie and Frankie prayed. Eddie said, "Pray Mama to God." And oh, how we did pray. Those who never prayed before prayed that night. I can't write anymore. All I can think of is those dead bodies lying there in the woods. Write to Grace as soon as you can. Martha.
Ugh.
Yeah, so
That's just like heartbreaking.
it really is. And it's just, I never heard of this fire.
Yeah.
No one ever, maybe if you live in Wisconsin, it's like more local
Yeah, but
story.
you're also so far back in time
Yeah.
that unless generations had really passed it on, it really would slip through the cracks.
Yep. And there was also a story about John Otter. He was actually born in Canada in 1844. He ended up in the U.S. He ended up joining the war. So
Okay.
he actually became a prisoner of war in Andersonville prison. He was really treated terribly. He contracted dysentery and scurvy. He ended up getting a gangrene toe. He ended up cutting off his own toe.
Oh, no.
When he started, like, you know, when you enlist, they like weigh you and take all your measurements
Yeah.
and physical information. So he was 150 pounds when he had enlisted. When he was rescued from the prison, he weighed 92 pounds.
Oh, my goodness.
So he needed to be, you know, helped and taken care of. So
Wow. And he found this nice farmland
Yeah.
and got to finally live a nice life.
exactly, he married
Wow.
a girl named Ada Phillips in 1868. So 3 years before the fire, they ended up having a child soon after, a boy named John. And so they also had, like, she had just given birth to a baby, and she was home, and he was taking care of her while she was, recovering. Yep. So he heard the fire was coming, and he took the toddler out. He took John with him to go look outside. And by the time he figured, like, he saw what was happening, he turned around, and his house was already
with her inside?
With her and the baby inside. Oh, no. So he took John and just kept, like, running through the night to try and, like, escape. Yeah. And they, some townspeople found him in the morning, and he was holding his son, but the baby, he was dead.
Oh, my goodness.
So this poor guy, like, he survived being a prisoner of war. He thought, like,
his
life
whole family.
was,
That makes, like, teary eyes right now.
And it's just more and more devastation. There's just so many names,
and not
you
only
can't
that,
read them all.
Like, I was thinking about this during my stories, that, like, survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Like, that's a true feeling. And yes, you're happy you made it, but then there's that dark side where you made it, but for now, what? You've lost everything you knew, everyone you loved.
Right.
Then you question, why did I make it? Why, what could I have done differently?
Yeah, there's, articles started coming out. They were, this one is from the Green Bay Weekly Gazette, so October 21st, so almost 2 weeks later, 1871. And this is on page 3. It's not even front page news. So it's, like, the governor, and he was more involved in the Chicago fire at first. So he was already headed that direction, and his wife actually stopped a train that was en route to Chicago for assistance, and she told them to go up to Peshtigo to help. And she's like, no, there's more people up there who need
so had
assistance.
you not done that too, they wouldn't have received as much help.
Right, they wouldn't have gotten much aid. And you can see, like, further down, his name was Lucius, and then his wife was Frances Bull Fairchild. So he actually borrowed money from their own treasury for relief, and that became one of his top priorities through his governorship. So they went and visited. So this tale was, like, what the governor was seeing as he was going to see this this town. So it says, the remains of a family was found consisting of a mother and 2 children burned to death, while nearby a father was laying with 2 twin children by his side, their throats all cut from ear to ear. In his despair, he had taken their lives and then his own. He was found lying upon his back, his arms crossed upon his breast, and a jackknife between his throat and hands. In another case of a boy of 18 had cut his throat, resolved not to endure the agony of burning, or to survive his mother and sister, who would probably already perish before him. An awful stillness brewed over the land, and the air was chill and cold.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it's just really, really dark.
Sad.
So they met a few survivors going back to the scene of their escape and were struck by their immobility to what we should ordinarily expect as natural emotions come upon the associations around them. They spoke of the loss of the parents, relatives, or friends, not in an unfeeling way, but of a matter-of-fact manner of speaking of something not immediately connected with themselves.
Wait, they're in shock?
Yeah, they're all still, it's like weeks later, and there's still nothing. Everything's gone. Like, how are they supposed to feel? They don't have any clothes. They have nothing. And they're just trying to survive. And they're so remote.
Yeah. Where are they going? And back in that day, when you went somewhere, right, you were going with your whole family.
Right.
So it's not even like they had, aunts and uncles or grandparents in other states that they could go to, because they were all mostly together.
Right. So they did did survive. Sad. Right. They did survive. The town, started to rebuild. There were investors who came and, started to take over. And you would think we would learn from these kinds of things, right? But no. There's more and more tales of fires every couple years, the weather cycle, and we don't
I'll touch upon that too in my episode, but it's true.
We don't learn. And there's even a more, it happened so, in sync with the Chicago fire, and there was also fires in Michigan that happened the same day. So there was speculation from scientists and, weather experts that it could have been a comet.
Oh.
So something, but that's,
I know. We'll never know.
Speculation, we don't know.
And when you're grieving and when you're going through all of that, right, you're just so desperate for a reason why.
Right. And there was slash and burn, the control burns that they would do. So it would try to
they did that a lot.
Yeah, they would try and, make it so this wouldn't happen, but they're saying that some of those could have converged with the wind, and then it just...
Oh, no, it just really didn't
It just
work.
picked up. There's also a really scary thing that was mentioned. So they referred to this fire and the wind conditions as the Peshtigo paradigm. So, of course, why not try and recreate it when you're in a military, right? So, American and British military studied the fire during World War II to learn how to recreate firestorms.
Oh, no.
During bombing campaigns against cities in Germany and Japan. So, author Denise Guess of the book called Firestorm at Peshtigo, this is a quote from her. They actually made a demo first, a little-scale model of wooden buildings, and studied how you would drop bombs until it created a firestorm. Something that devastating and that hot. So not only did we not try to prevent it further,
we wanted to cause it harm to other people.
Right.
On a large scale.
Right. So are we still doing that? I don't know. But just the thought of it makes me sick.
Yeah, that gives you the goosebumps a little bit.
Yeah. So these families were all devastated, and I don't know. I'm glad I learned about it, but it's also sickening to learn that as humans we would want to hurt each other that way.
Yeah, I think that's the story of life this day and age.
Yeah.
And I think that's the concept, right? I mean, I just remember being in history class, and the reason why they teach you all these things is so you don't repeat history. I just remember that being drilled in my head. You learn it so you don't repeat it.
And this is a natural disaster, and we want to
repeat.
Man make this disaster. Well, on that note.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's your story?
Yep, that's my story.
It reminds me when I did the family of the hurricane that I focused on in Melba, because like just reading the story, I was like, it was like making me a little nauseous and sick thinking about, because there's children involved too, right? When there's children involved, I feel like it's just, as moms, it's so much more like so sad.
Because they're helpless, and you just, the baby being lost, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, it's very interesting because I also had never heard of that story. And so if you're out there and you've had a family member involved in that, we would love to hear your story, because you would maybe have more insight than we do. But finding that interview was huge.
Yeah. And a lot of, I found the names, like the Bateman and the family trees didn't have articles linked on the family tree. So I don't know if they're unaware
too far down generations.
Yeah. So
well, let us know. Give us a call. So you just did fire.
Yep.
So it kind of worked out that mine is around ice. So, all right, here we go. So, don't tell my mother.
Okay.
Those were the last words that 17-year-old Burrell Hackett shouted to his friend Ignatius Roth as the ice beneath them broke apart on the Niagara River. It was February 4th, 1912, just after 3 p.m. I'm just going to pause really quick. Have you ever gone to Niagara Falls?
No.
I myself have not, but when we were in Canada, we went to Montmorency Falls, which I guess is taller than Niagara, so I guess I have a good vision of what it probably looks like, sounds like. But moments earlier, the two friends from Cleveland, Ohio, had joined thousands of others to experience the spectacular known as the Ice Bridge. Every winter, when temperatures stayed cold and long enough, something extraordinary appeared on the base of Niagara Falls. Huge sheets of ice carried down the river, jammed together in the gorge. Pushed and pressed by the current, they froze into a solid mass, a frozen highway stretching from the American shore to the Canadian shore. Sometimes it was 1,000 feet long, up to 80 feet thick, and nearly a quarter of a mile wide. And there's pictures of people on this ice. So even though the water was still rushing underneath it, it was like a winter carnival frozen in time. Like, people treated it like an amusement park on ice back in the day. So there was horse-drawn carriages going from shore to shore. Their bells were jingling. There was that constant, sound of the falls behind them in the background. Families posed for photographs. It was cold, so I'm sure their cheeks were all pink and they were all bundled in warm gear. The vendors called out from little wooden shanties that they lined up along this shore selling hot drinks, even alcohol, and trinkets, souvenirs. And they had bonfires crackling in barrels, and children would even be, ice skating on the smooth patches, sledding down the small hills that were there. So you really just could hear laughter, echoes. They also had couples, strolling hand in hand, and it was somewhat of a thrill and romance for them at that time.
Yeah.
So, but what was once thought as this winter wonderland, it soon became a death trap. So 3 people had died that day. Onlookers left in shock at what they had watched, and one young man, Ignatius Roth, forever changed. And I chose to focus on the story of Ignatius Roth because he wasn't just a name in a headline. He was a son, a brother. He had a family, and he also was the survivor in the story.
Okay, cool.
So a little bit about him, though. Ignatius Roth was born October 20th, 1894 in Cleveland, Ohio. He was a first-generation American of German descent. He was the 7th child of Carl, which I also saw in records as Charles and Chaz, and to Mary Roth. And the Roths were a working-class Catholic family, part of a tight-knit community that was clustered in Cuyahoga County. And tragedy was something that the family knew all too well as he grew up, because in April 1898, Ignatius' father, Carl, died of tuberculosis. So just 7 months later, their son, Aloysius, also passed away, which is hard to read the death record, but it looked like something stomach-related. So here's Mary, the mom, left as a widow. She never remarried, raising her surviving children basically with the shadow of the loss.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind as we hear Ignatius' story. But at that time, growing up in Cuyahoga County in the 1890s, it was kind of a city bustling with factories and, that industrial progress that was happening at the time. But, it really wasn't always easy, especially with the loss of his father. Children like Ignatius Roth, they spent their time playing, having to do chores around the house, went to school, and also while having to face that time period where there was disease and economic struggles, and especially for first generation families, from another country, they really relied on their faith and community to get them through things. So, and what's really interesting about this is I also found, even decades later, stories where his accounts, he's being interviewed. So that's where I really got a lot of my information. I mean, when I started looking, there was a lot of things online. Again, a lot of pictures, a lot of
weeding through
stories.
that is
tough.
tough.
Oh, yeah, it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I decided to go through Ignatius's eyes since he was literally there. So I specifically found the Plain Dealer from February 5th, 1912, interviewing him, as well as the anniversary interview 16 years later on February 14th, 1928. So when he was then in his 30s. So I'm able to tell the story of Ignatius Roth's own accounts of that day. And what had happened was, once he returned home after the incident, he went to Cleveland that night, exhausted, shaken, but alive. And his companion Burrell was not so fortunate, having drowned while trying to save a woman trapped on the collapsed ice. So stepping off the train, it says his mother hugged him tightly, crying, quote, "Well, you're alive."
Oh.
Ignatius replied, "Hello, Mother." Then he began recounting how quickly the disaster unfolded. And according to the Cleveland Leader from February 5th, 1912, he quoted, "Burrell and I had crossed the ice bridge from the American side nearly to the Canadian side. We took some pictures and then we started back. We were about in the middle of the bridge when I heard a cracking sound. I laughed because it didn't seem serious. Moments later, the ice broke apart beneath them. It seemed as if the shore was moving and we were still standing." And then what followed was chaos. Ignatius, Burrell, and the Toronto couple, Mr. and Mrs. Stanton, they started scrambling across the shifts of ice as spectators all around them were shouting about how to get out. So there were about 30 people on the ice when it cracked that did make it off. Roth fell and broke his camera, and Burrell yelled, in quote, "Don't bother with that, save your own life." So exhausted, Miss Stanton had fallen, and with her husband calling for help in desperation, Burrell, true to his nature, said his mother, turned back to help them. Mm. And so again, Roth, 17, and at this point is risking his own life to go help. So Roth, guided by voices from the Canadian shore, did jump to another patch of ice. Quote, "The men on shore yelled, 'Jump,' and I landed on another stretch of ice. They threw a rope to me and pulled me ashore, dragged me through the freezing waters, and then Roth was taken to the nearby hotel to thaw out." So he never saw Burrell again, and he quoted, "I didn't see what happened to Burrell and the man and woman," which in hindsight was probably a good thing, because can you, like, other spectators literally saw this event, the rest of the event, for about 30 minutes unfold.
Right.
In horror, really. So above the gorge, so they're on the ice, and it's now split. They weren't able to get off the American side. They couldn't make it to the Canadian side because they were just too exhausted. So when you're going down the river, there's actually bridges along the way before it gets to the rapids. So firemen had dropped ropes, and there was also railroad workers that had been right nearby. So they were trying to drop ropes from the bridges, and for a brief moment it seemed Burrell might survive, but his strength failed because he tried a few attempts, and even on the last attempt he tried holding with his teeth, but he was so exhausted that he couldn't get it.
That's sad.
He fell into the icy river and was washed away. The Stantons, after numerous attempts to grab the rope as well, the husband caught it 3 times and was trying to wrap it around his wife, and it just wouldn't hold. So after those attempts, they embraced with one last kiss and hug, and then they both, went into the water.
Sad.
I know. And for the couple, this was a tradition for them. They would come every year. They would come to this to do it together. Oh, wow. She was a photographer, and he was kind of like a high up admin for a paper company, I believe.
Okay.
So decades later, this is when Roth says, I've never been back at Niagara Falls since. The ice gave without any warning at all, and I didn't suffer any ill effects from the cold. He recognized the narrow margin by which most lives had been spared. So he probably had that survivor's guilt of, why, should I have gone back to get them? But didn't, if I had, I would have gone there, gone under as well. So he quoted, "If it had happened an hour later, many more would have perished, as several excursion trains were due. Ignatius survived, but he carried that day with him for the rest of his life." So, and to his point, the afternoon is where it would pick up with tourists. So we're talking 20,000 people in one day, it would say, would come to this spectacular. So a life where he made later, he married his beloved wife, Blanchette Wilson, on August 17th, 1920, in his hometown of Chattahooga. And he worked an ordinary life as an accountant, though an ordinary life when you've had your life almost taken from you.
Maybe he just wanted something.
Yes.
Didn't want to be a firefighter. Or
correct.
Just
calm.
Yep. Keep the numbers going.
They had no children, and he did die kind of young at the age of 53 on November 19th, 1947, in his hometown. He's buried in a family plot at St. Mary's Cemetery. And the plot is very nice. They have one kind of larger stone, and they each have a stone. His mother, his father, and almost all his siblings are buried there. So, reading this, what was really interesting was like the pictures. There is literally a picture that someone took of Burrell standing on the ice in the middle, like actually him. I'm going to show you really quick. Like that is him floating away, stranded.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
And then, like, these are the people, like, they just come see the ice. I mean, it was like a winter wonderland. It really did look like it.
That is cool. Those are great pictures.
So this is where I would ask you, what I feel like, would you have gone out? Because I live on the side of caution more, and this is what really made me think about what made people keep going out there, right? And I don't know if you've heard the term psychologists use as normalcy bias, but basically it's the belief that because something hasn't gone wrong in the past, it won't go wrong now.
Right.
And I feel like that happens in a lot of situations. Like when you're swimming out far, I'm going to try to swim here, and then people do it all the time, and then something happens. Or you're ice fishing, or,
Or if you think it's such a large group out there.
Right. They do it every day.
If they think it's safe, why wouldn't it be safe for me?
I know. Yeah. So it's like that familiarity where, like, the danger is safe, and, like, tradition makes it, like, the part where it happens, we do it all the time.
Or even it's almost thrill-seeking, too. Like a roller coaster,
That's true.
It could always...
The adrenaline.
It could always break, but you're still going on it because it's really exciting. It's
true. So for me, the natural disaster was these ice jams, which I did a bit of research on, and it happened a lot more than I never heard that term before.
Right,
and it would happen in places on rivers and such and some towns would actually get flooding because of, like, pretty bad flooding because of it. So what really happened on this day was everyone was on it, and a piece of large ice fell off while they were all standing on it and hit the bridge, caused it to crack. So it was kind of a bit of nature's doing, but also a bit of human
intervention,
error, so it just made the perfect storm. And even I think about them on the ice, had they run first to the Canadian side, had they caught the ropes, like, there were so many things here that, like,
so close to surviving, but
so close, and just kept on. Like, was this the destiny? I don't even understand. So after the tragedy, Niagara authorities made a permanent decision that no one will ever again be able to step foot on the ice bridges. And they did. I didn't read many stories later where there was any other incidents. And if you go on the Canadian side, they have a little plaque that's there in memory of the Stantons and Burrell, who I found an article from his hometown saying, like, they gave him an award to be a hero for being a hero and trying to do the right thing. And there was also this really sad sentence in an article that said, that Ignatius went home to a family of joy, and just streets over, there was a family in sorrow. And I was just like, it is true.
The contrast.
It's a lot. So, I think we as people step onto these ice bridges every day where we think things are safe and that we're used to it. And
great, now my anxiety is going to be through the roof this week.
Sorry.
Do I take a left or a right? I don't know.
It's true. I mean, sometimes, it's not our own faults. But so I think the story of Ignatius and Burrell just reminds us that, Mother Nature is powerful and, again, unpredictable. And with history, let's try to learn from it a little bit. So that was my story, but I really was fascinated with the vision of the winter wonderland. Like, I could just see myself there.
Does it still get that icy, with warmer temperatures?
Yeah, so I did read where it hasn't froze over in, like, a really long time. And
I know all the glaciers are melting and stuff. So
so I don't think it's been like that.
That was those pictures you showed. That looked like the North Pole. That was
it was really cool. Though.
Yeah.
So would you have gone out? Is the
question. Probably. I would have been floating away.
Come back. So, but no, I don't think it has. I do think that if you go during the winter now, it still looks icy and steamy, and you still probably get that feeling.
Yeah.
But I do have it on my bucket list to go there. So I feel like next time I do go there, I'm going to just have this story in the back of my head and just...
Our list is so long.
It's so long. We're going to ghost towns and Niagara Falls and museums, prisons.
Yeah.
So, for this week's Shadow Spotlight, we want to thank Dee for sharing a story with us that had passed down through her family, one that reminds us how quickly nature can change everything. And kind of like we just mentioned, It's just a stroke of bad luck sometimes. So it was summer of 1870, and Dee's great-great-grandmother, Karen Peterson, had only just arrived in Minnesota from Norway. So they had just immigrated.
Oh, wow.
2 weeks.
Oh, no.
And, 2 weeks into her life in America, and tragedy struck. So Karen and her husband, Anders, were settling near Atwater Station, about 90 miles northwest of St. Paul. He worked along the St. Paul and Pacific Railroad as a section boss. They lived in a small shanty near the rails, had 4 children under the age of 7. And then came Sunday afternoon and a furious storm. So the Star Tribune on July 28, 1870 wrote, quote, "During a furious storm, Miss Peterson's wife of a section boss was killed by lightning. The current descended through an open stovepipe hole in the roof, striking upon the back of her neck as she bowed her head, causing instantaneous death."
Oh, no.
End quote. She was 31 years old. The lightning didn't set fire to the house. It didn't damage the wall or furniture. It only took her life. As if nature had chosen her as a target, literally through the roof, through that small hole, the moment she seemed to be bending down right in front of it.
What?
Yep. So on Find a Grave, I read that Karen never used this surname during her life, but Grimsrud was what was put on her stone, and that was the name of the family farm back in Norway where Anders was born and raised. And decades later, their son Christian, one of the boys that she left behind that day, grew up and he built a successful life, and that's the name he kind of went with going forward, and that's what's kind of all on the family stone. So it read Karen Grimsrud. So it's a name that tied her back to the roots that she left behind and the family who carried her story forward. I mean, unfortunately for them, they probably don't have many memories of their mother if they were all under 7.
Yeah.
But Karen's death was one of those moments where, again, fate and nature collide, wrong place, wrong time. But the legacy didn't end in that storm. It lived on through her children and their successes, and through Dee, who still carries the story 150 years later. So thank you, Dee, for stepping into the shadow with us and bringing Karen's memory back into light. So that's the heartfelt, episodes we have this week.
Yep.
And thanks for listening. If you have stories, natural disasters is probably the most relatable dark genealogy thing we do.
Most people that
because they happen in masses usually, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So if you have a story, again, we're on Facebook, Shadows from the Tree. We also have shadowsfromthetree@gmail.com, but we'd love to hear from you. And thanks for listening.